See the snow? March 15th, 2020.
High volume saline irrigation after surgery. Medications can then get into the peritoneal sinus vesicles to perform when they were actually blocked.
The whole world is freaking out from COVID 2019. I'm going to Target to try to get some bottled water. There's restrictions on bottled water, not paper towels, toilet paper, sanitizer, things like that everywhere.
Like really I was taking a lot of time off work to get clinics and whatnot, and this year I'm maybe off work twice this year, whereas last year I've been off 12 times already.
Surgery is effective, but anytime surgery is performed for a chronic medical condition, the surgery must be viewed as an adjunct to chronic medical therapy. In the case of sinus surgery, one of its main benefits is to enlarge the sinus openings, facilitating access to the sinuses for medications. Surgery is not perfect, and recurrence is possible.
If, however, the patient is presenting with very severe symptoms, so severe facial pain and pressure, very high fevers, just a very large symptom burden, you could consider a 2-week course of a first-line antibiotic, systemic antibiotic such as amoxicillin or clavulin or augmentin. So there you have it. Sinusitis is common, presents with headaches and nasal congestion and discharge. Some patients have a chronic sore throat. All of these symptoms can be mimicked by migraine headaches. They're differentiated from sinusitis by the presence of mucosal inflammation, detected either on nasal examination or CT scanning. Acute sinusitis follows an acute viral syndrome and should be suspected.
Speed of coronavirus spread, I think, will be much less than in Europe.
You're saying basically Russia is geographically predisposed to fighting this virus because everything is so spread out.
So we have no roads. How can the coronavirus travel between towns and cities and villages without roads?
2020.
So
at 8 o'clock, Allegheny County goes under a stay-at-home order, which I thought was a lockdown order.
Of course, that doesn't mean that coronavirus
To prevent the coronavirus, but at least right now I'm told you can still exercise. But this is extremely scary.
And also, you see that the older people, but our elder people have no money to travel. They're sitting home, they're sitting in their villages, and they are very poor. This fact can protect our elder people from quick spread of this disease, but our health system is also very poor. So we have no enough hospitals, no enough medical staff, we have no fabrics to provide masks, protection, costumes, and so on.
So what measures has Russia taken so far in limiting the spread of the coronavirus?
So you see that now the borders are closed, the schools are closed, the universities are closed, but the metro underground transport is opened. For me, it's a great surprise, and I think that it's the most dangerous source for spreading this infection.
Dr. Vasilyeva, you're the head of the Alliance of Doctors Trade Union in Russia. What do you need from the government to help contain this? What do you think Russia should be doing right now?
So, of course, Russia should protect doctors. The government should equip every medical worker with protection, with masks, costumes, and so on. It's very important. Every medical worker who go for a walk and go to the hospital and back home is really spreading this infection in the transport, in the metro, in the streets, everywhere. So the medical workers should be well equipped.
And you're saying today Russia is not prepared for that?
Of course. Some towns there's only one medical worker in reanimation, only one. He or she is working for 4 people. So,
Restaurants are
it's
shut
very
down, all non-essential
difficult to work.
businesses are shut
Even
down,
now,
all social activities are shut down, anything in groups
Dr.
of 6 or
Anastasia
more is prohibited.
Vasilyeva, the head of Russia's Alliance of Doctors Trade Union, speaking with us about
The
Russia's
United
response to COVID-19.
States has
Anastasia's in
not
Moscow.
had such
Thank you
a
very much.
disruption in supply chain since at least the Civil War. That says the governor of Pennsylvania on this day, March 23rd, 2020. Dow Jones Industrial continues to hemorrhage points. It lost another 3% to close at 18,000.
As of now, the Tokyo Summer Olympics are still on.
Everything's
The International
canceled. The
Olympic Committee
Pittsburgh
says
Marathon's
cancellation
canceled. All
is
of
not
life
on
is
the
canceled.
agenda, though one prominent
Who wants
member
to
of the
live on a
IOC
life
says
like this?
otherwise. And a postponement of the
I'm
games
not
looks
really
increasingly
afraid of the
likely.
coronavirus. I
Canada
don't think it
says
will
if the
kill me.
Olympics
I'm afraid
continue
of
in July, their
what's
athletes are
happening
not
to this
going.
country.
Hayley Wickenheiser is a 5-time Olympian with Canada's women's ice hockey team. She took home 4 golds and 1 silver. Wickenheiser is
Because the
also
land
part
of the
the
free is
International
no
Olympic
longer
Committee's Athletes
so
Commission.
free.
I asked her what challenges athletes are facing right now.
Games, athletes train for literally to the minute. Sports like swimming, track and field, gymnastics, these athletes are training and they know exactly the minute, the time of day they're going to compete, and then you work backwards from 4 years
Every
to make
2
a
days
plan
I
to
lose
allow
my
you to
mind. I
compete
have to
and be
go
at your
on my
best
strength,
at those
have
moments. And
medicines
that just
adjusted.
isn't possible given the
Because it
state
just
of
keeps
our
getting worse.
facilities
Like
and the
the
training
whole
scenarios that exist.
situation that we're living under
But
keeps
bigger
getting
than that,
worse.
the athletes, and we believe that in Canada we're part of the collective community, and putting ourselves as athletes out training and doing things that need to be done at risk ultimately puts many others at risk. And so I think it came down to doing what's right for the health of the nation and our citizens first. Second.
Everyone suspects everyone else of having the coronavirus. Everyone's crazy. Everyone's on edge.
Yes, I have.
I was MF'd in a Target bathroom the other day because I, sniffled a little bit because of allergies, and just told by some lady that I absolutely positively must walk in a straight line today. The neurosis and the insanity of the whole situation is freaking me out. So we need some normalcy in this country, and I don't think what's going on is helping.
Everyone, a lot of stress and anxiety dealing with this in the unknown. But in the end, I think the overwhelming direction was we need to do this. It's the right thing to do.
Olympic performance can often lead to some pretty tasty sponsorship deals.
7:49.
Will there
I'm
be
told
an
that not
economic
only
knock-on effect from this?
is there an order to stay home after 8 o'clock, but there's supposedly a curfew. Rumors of a curfew of some sort where you can't be out after 8 o'clock, so I don't know if that's also going to happen.
You're impacted at an Olympic Games. It basically feeds and fuels you for the next 4 years in terms of the financial way to live. This is very scary, and this is real for a lot of athletes. And will my sponsors be able to stay?
Kenny Rogers is dead.
It's been out maybe 10 days or so. Those of you will tell you that it was written and produced by a man named Lionel Richie of the Commodores. And it's called Lady. America's
April 24th, 2020. The time now is 5:55 p.m. and this is President Donald Trump on 90.5 WESA Pittsburgh NPR.
That we have. We've gotten to know them as well as I know them. They're great people, incredible, talented. They love our country. Also, economists and other professionals working to develop a sophisticated plan to reopen the economy as soon as the time is right. One based on the best science, the best modeling, and the best medical research there is anywhere on Earth. Our great people have been, especially when it comes to our public health experts and officials, have been helping other countries, dealing with other countries, constant touch with other countries, helping them out, because many of them have never seen anything like what's happening. But our decision will be based on hard facts and data as to the opening. I'm also hopeful to have Americans working again by that Easter, that beautiful Easter day. But rest assured, every decision we make is grounded solely in the health, safety, and well-being of our citizens. This is a medical crisis. This isn't a financial crisis. But it's a thing that nobody has seen for many, many decades. Nothing like this. Marshaling our economic strength is a key feature of defeating the virus, producing the material supplies and equipment that we need, and they're doing a really fantastic job.
Nobody that's alive.
We're helping the governors. We had a conference call the other day with the governors, and we allowed the press to join us on the call, and the spirit between us and the governors has been really great. We should never be reliant on a
I
foreign
don't think
country
anybody that's been alive
for the means
during the
of our own
lifetime of
survival. I
anyone
think
that's
we've
alive
learned a
now
lot.
has seen anything like this.
Learned a lot. This crisis has underscored just how critical it is to have strong borders and a robust manufacturing sector. For 3 years, we've embarked on a great national project to secure our immigration system and bring back our manufacturing jobs. We've brought back many jobs, record numbers of jobs. And this really shows, this experience shows how important borders are. Without borders, you don't have a nation. Our goal for the future must be to have American medicine for American patients, American supplies for American hospitals, and for our great American heroes. Now both parties must unite to ensure the United States is truly an independent nation in every sense of the word. Energy independence, we've established that. It's something incredible that we've established. We're energy independent, manufacturing independence, economic independence, and territorial independence enforced by strong sovereign borders. America will never be a supplicant nation. We will be a proud, prosperous, independent, and
systems are struggling to cope in some countries such as Italy or Spain. At the same time, Asian countries have seen through very strong public health measures the reduction in numbers of new cases. So examples from China tell us that it's possible to control it.
So President Trump has expressed enormous frustration with the measures taken so far to contain coronavirus in the U.S. From what you've seen in other parts of the world, how important are the next 2 to 3 weeks to getting the containment protocol right?
Well, I think what we have seen in other places is exactly that. If you try to go after the virus, you may then be able to isolate only sick people and not try really to quarantine all areas. For example, South Korea was doing extensive testing and contact tracing. So our message is really same for everyone. It's basically test people, isolate and trace. And that's the best way. Obviously, we may need to go into physical distancing, trying to slow down the progression of the virus to give time to health systems to cope with numbers. What we were worried from the day one was arrival of a virus to weaker health systems, and we have been trying to help countries with weaker health systems to get equipped and get trained. Hopefully, countries in sub-Saharan Africa will be able to face this danger in a more prepared way now.
So China is planning to lift travel restrictions in Wuhan. Those are pretty strict travel restrictions, as well as the surrounding Hubei province, where the coronavirus was first identified. Is the WHO concerned about that?
Well, we believe that every country in the world is trying to do for everyone. It's not the same thing if your country has just a few identified people with COVID-19, or if you have thousands of people already in the health facilities. And countries really have to assess their situation and try to find appropriate measures. WHO is providing really general guidelines. We believe, and what we have seen in China is that they have really taken drastic measures. People have been in their homes for months, and at the end they managed to bring the numbers of new infections almost to zero. So we believe that countries should share experiences. Not the situation, it's not the same everywhere, but we should really try to learn from another. This is really time for solidarity.
As of today, what is the biggest concern at the WHO regarding this pandemic?
It is still what will happen when virus arrives to areas with weak health systems. For example, if you look at Africa, there are countries who already experience a number of outbreaks of different diseases, of measles, of cholera, where there is a big prevalence of HIV/AIDS, where there is a malnourishment among population, how these systems and these population will face this outbreak. So we have been trying from the beginning to work with them to see where are the gaps and how we can fulfill. We have, for example, distributed personal protective equipment to 68 countries. We have distributed laboratory testing kits to 120 countries around the world. We continue to do some trainings, but again, it's unfortunately the level of development of health system is very unequal in this world, and obviously we are worried for those who have a weaker health systems.
Tariq Yasharevich is a spokesperson with the WHO. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For many people, like you perhaps, stuck at home, spending lots of time online, the non-stop flood of news about the pandemic might feel like information overload. Imagine, though, not being able to get any updates about COVID-19, or how it's spreading, or how to protect yourself. That's a reality right now for millions of people in Indian-controlled Kashmir. Here's the world's Lydia Emanuelidou with that story.
Zuhur Vani is an attorney in New York, but in the wake of COVID-19, he's found himself being asked to play public health expert from time to time.
People are very hungry about the information.
Vani is originally from Kashmir, a disputed region between India and Pakistan. He still has lots of family there.
I have my elderly parents. I'm really worried about them and my siblings.
Worried because, he says, they haven't been able to get good information about COVID-19. The reason? Terrible internet. It's been bad since August. That's when the Indian government cracked down on Kashmir and imposed a communications blackout. No internet, no phones, nothing. Since then, the government has restored some access to the internet, but it's really, really slow. That's why Vani's family is constantly turning to him with questions about the coronavirus.
They are very much confused about it.
So if Vani had an idea, he teamed up with a relative who works as a scientist for the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and made a short video.
No issue with social distancing.
The video, which they posted on YouTube,
Hospitals have what they need and are prepared to meet the increased demand for ICU services.
So we're looking at things such as personal protective equipment. We're looking at items to have care for the individuals.
Like others, Ross emphasizes the need for people to stay home, and if they do go out, stay away from each other. That will take concerted effort from everyone. 5 days after talking to Mayor Helfrich, the number of cases in York County has increased exponentially. While it's clear the public plays a big role in slowing the spread of the virus, what's less clear is how much health systems are doing to prepare. With the coronavirus about to hit the region, as Helfrich says, like a train, people will soon know one way or another whether the state and health systems have done their part as well. In York, I'm Brett Schultes.
This story is part of a collaboration with Spotlight PA and Philadelphia Inquirer. You're listening to All Things Considered on 90.5 WESA.
Today's programming is supported by Xfinity from Comcast. Users can access streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, On Demand, and more in one place with X1 and the Xfinity Stream app at home and on the go. More information is available at 1-800-XFINITY or at Xfinity stores.
This is 90.5 WESA at 448. The latest Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania news about 15 minutes away at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. Then later tonight on this station, the national conversation with All Things Considered. We'll discuss the new stimulus bill, the traumatic situation in New York, and more. More of your coronavirus questions answered. That's tonight at 9 on 90.5 FM, streaming online at WESA.FM.
Today's programming is supported by the Falk Laboratory School, located on the University of Pittsburgh campus and affiliated with the School of Education. Falk provides children in K-8 with a progressive education grounded in community, diversity, and experiential learning. Now accepting applications for middle school at falkschool.pitt.edu.
The world's reporters and producers have a singular mission to put you in touch with events around the globe that affect life here in the U.S., from the coronavirus to global trade to efforts to dial back climate change. Each day we bring you fresh insights, unique voices, one-of-a-kind reporting. Join us for an hour that takes you around the globe. It's right here. It's the world.
Tonight at 7 on 90.5 WESA.
Dow Industrial's up 1,351 points today, 6.3%, 22,552. NASDAQ up 413, that is 5.6%, 7797. S&P 500 increased 154 points, 6.2%, 26.30 there. As we mentioned up at the top of the broadcast real briefly, unemployment claims last week soared to 3.2 million. That is astronomical. So, the states with the biggest increases in those claims for the week ending March 14th.
Donald Trump's going to send everyone a check for $2 trillion.
There.
Washington State layoffs in transportation, warehousing, real estate, and leasing as well. Pennsylvania, layoffs in accommodation and food service industries, transportation, also warehousing and education. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by CrowdStreet, where accredited investors can review and invest online in dozens of institutional quality commercial real estate deals to diversify their portfolios. Current investment opportunities, including opportunity zone offerings, are available at crowdstreet.com. And by C3.ai, the software suite for digital transformation, using artificial intelligence and IoT to solve previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. And by ReputationDefender.com, introducing their Reputation Report Card, which scans and grades a person's online presence in real time, showing people how they look online and what to do about it. More at ReputationDefender.com.
COVID-19 has changed daily life in the U.S. We'll be answering your questions live every weekday on The National Conversation with All Things Considered from NPR News.
Tonight at 9 on 90.5 WESA.
All things considered.
WESA's Good Question series looks at what you've always wanted to know about Pittsburgh.
When settlers came to North America, it was actually the most widespread mammal species on the whole planet.
Look around you. What have you always wondered? Send us your questions at WESA.fm.
Today's programming is supported by Xfinity from Comcast. Users can access streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, On Demand, and more in one place with X1 and the Xfinity Stream app at home and on the go. More information is available at 1-800-XFINITY and Xfinity stores.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. The House is going to vote tomorrow, we are told, on that rescue package. American businesses and American workers getting some of what they need to survive the next however many months this is going to last. Included for the first time in the unemployment safety net are gig workers, independent contractors, call them what you will. Here to talk about those folks and how they are going to get by in this coronavirus recession is Marketplace's Chrissy Clark. She's the host of the documentary podcast, The Uncertain Hour. Hey, Chrissy.
Hey, Kai. Greetings from my socially distanced makeshift home studio to yours.
Yes. Same. So look, this is season what? 4 now, coming up with The Uncertain Hour, right?
Yep.
And you've been looking at contractors and gig workers in this economy. So how did it come to be that all of these people we are relying on during this crisis, how did they come to be considered not employees but independent contractors in the first place?
Well, what you hear from business founders, from economists, is that employing people can be messy and it can be expensive to cover all the benefits that come with being an employee. So if you can figure out a way to set up a different arrangement to have your workers be independent contractors, that can, at least in the short term, help you be more flexible, more profitable. But then there are also all these social risks of having people not be considered employees, not get the employee safety nets that come with that status. And of course, gig workers and independent contractors are a really diverse group. Some make a lot of money, think lawyers and real estate agents. Some don't make much money at all, think Uber drivers and Amazon delivery people and even janitors. The thing that unites independent contractors is that they are not technically employees. They don't file W-2s at tax time, they file 1099s. And when you're not an employee, you don't have an employer who's paying into the government's unemployment system.
And that, of course, becomes relevant because if you're not paying in, you don't necessarily get benefits under the way things used to be. And we'll get to the rescue bill in a second, but you don't pay, you don't get, right?
Right, that's usually how it works, but these are not normal times, and so actually part of the huge stimulus bill that Congress is finalizing today will at least temporarily make independent contractors eligible for unemployment benefits if they've lost a job because of the coronavirus and its fallout.
And I don't want to make too much of this, but fundamentally, that's an economic lifesaver for a lot of these people.
Yeah, one thing to point out that labor advocates are pointing out is that, of course, companies like Uber and Lyft and other mobile platforms, they've not been paid into unemployment insurance funds. So the government will now be footing the bill for these payments. But still, just the idea of expanding it to independent contractors is a really big deal, especially because a lot of independent contractors put all this in perspective, he's an independent contractor. He's had a steady gig with a property management company doing handyman stuff for Airbnb apartments, which, surprise, has not been getting a lot of bookings in the last few weeks. So Tice's work has almost completely dried up, and now he's not sure how he's going to make ends meet.
I mean, it's frightening. How am I going to get bills paid? How am I going to get rent paid?
Yeah, but that's not just independent contractors, right? Because I'm sure restaurant workers, and bartenders, and people who work in movie theaters, for instance, they're asking themselves the same question, right?
Absolutely, but there's this kind of extra fear that I think some independent contractors and gig workers face because of all of these gig-shaped holes in our social safety nets, holes that the coronavirus pandemic is really shining a light on. So independent contractors don't have access to this whole list of things: workers' comp, minimum wage and overtime protections, disability insurance, paid sick leave, which is obviously a big thing these days. Even in the emergency sick leave measures that Congress passed last week that expanded paid sick time to many Americans if they have the coronavirus or have to care for someone who does, gig workers were mostly left out. They could be eligible for some tax relief at the end of the year to make up for unpaid sick days, but for people without a personal safety net, that might be too little too late.
Chrissy Clark, season 4 of the documentary podcast that we do here at Marketplace is called The Uncertain Hour. Coming when season 4 coming, Chrissy?
Soon.
Soon. We'll take soon. Look, it's different times. Chrissy Clark, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Ty.
Well, Brett, thanks a lot for your time. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. My name's Larry Harlan, and I'm with TopCore, which is a training program sponsored by the University of Texas, Penn State University, and the Colorado School of Mines. TopCore was put together about 2012 at the end of the year by members from the industry. It was ExxonMobil and General Electric who were combining to think through the fact that with the technology that was evolving in states where traditionally involved in oil and gas production, and even in oil-producing states, the technology was evolving so quickly and the applications taking place that the regulatory community, frankly, was having a hard time keeping up with the knowledge of what was going on. We found that a lot of the states were moving new regulators into oil and gas, and turnover was such that there was a great need to actually find a way of training the state regulators that were actually out there representing the public and representing the public trust on making sure that the industry was in fact doing what they needed to do. And so the work was identified as a need. The 3 universities were approached to say, look, we need to find a way that industry can help this happen, but it needs to be done in an unbiased and in a fact-based way. And so we went to 3 schools that were obviously well experienced in petroleum geology and petroleum engineering, but were geographically diverse, covering different parts of the country. So Penn State, Colorado School of Mines, and University of Texas jumped at the chance and said, great, we'd be happy to do this. So they began by actually going to the regulatory agencies and saying, tell us about the training you do. What do you do for your people? How often is it done? That sort of thing. And how often would you send your people to training so that they could design something that would be beneficial to the regulators themselves? So they came up after a couple of years, they took that initial seed money and came up with a program that includes both an online component where the regulators prepare to go to the workshops that are held at the various universities, specializing in different components. So you've got a piece that's directly focused on geology and petroleum engineering and technology advancement. You have a piece on environmental management, and then there's a third component that's on evolving issues and communications. What are the hot button issues in the industry, and how do you, as a regulatory community and an industry, how do you communicate on those issues? And so they developed it. They've now been 2 years into actually implementing the training, and so each one of the universities has now hosted 2 workshops. And so total, we've now trained over 200 state, a couple of federal, and then also 4 provinces in Canada have also sent regulators. Over 200 have actually now been trained. And so the feedback from the regulatory community has been overwhelmingly positive for 2 reasons. One, the feedback has been the material is very good, it's very important. It gives them a chance to interface with regulators from other states and from other geographic regions that do things differently, different types of operational challenges. The feedback on the training itself has been very good. And then the other component is, part of the model is that the money that the universities have to put this on, it provides the training absolutely for free. So the states, many of which are strapped for cash, like many institutes are able to send these regulators to these workshops for no charge. So the funding of the universities covers the travel, the housing, the workshops, the facilities, all of that. So it's absolutely been well received. And where we are now, we've had great participation from a number of companies. ExxonMobil, General Electric, the Environmental Defense Fund has been instrumental. It's been very helpful. Mitchell Foundation down in Texas has been contributing to that. And our newest contributor is Chevron Corporation.
So you mentioned the different challenges that different regions face. How do you tailor the program for each of those locations? How does the industry and the relationship with the regulators look different from one part of the country to another?
Yeah, no, great question. I think kind of some of the introductory work on petroleum geology and technology, the engineering part, that is pretty basic at the beginning. But since we hold these workshops in various areas, they're actually able to go out into the field. We've had real luck with industry hosting and the regulatory agencies hosting workshops out in the field. So, for example, down in Austin, back in May, the group there had a chance to go down and actually visit a saltwater disposal facility on where the disposal water is done away with. That same day, they drove down south to San Antonio and actually went out onto a site where a well was being fracked and got a full tour of how that work was being done. So I think there's kind of the base knowledge that goes out, but since they hold them in various places, they can actually go into the field and see what happens in the field in those areas where they're actually working. Because it varies. Geology is different, requirements somewhat vary from state to state, and they're actually able to go put boots on the ground and take a look at it.
So talking about the feedback you've been getting from this initial kind of phase, what are people learning that's surprising to them or particularly valuable?
Well, I think from a core standpoint, particularly for the new regulators that are actually coming into the industry, working for the regulatory agencies, some of them come in with frankly, very little oil and gas experience. And so some of them, the learning curve is great high. I mean, they're being asked to go out into the field, and some states have training and some to varying degree, but all of the states have said, yeah, the training is very valuable for a brand new regulator. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a young person. You know, some of the states that have got oil and gas in a growing kind of industry, people are moving over from the mining industry or from the water regulatory side. And so learning about oil and gas from its basic, grassroots up is something that's really in demand. But we have people that have been doing it for years who come out and use it as a refresher. And so the feedback's been good from kind of the new and from the experienced regulatory community.
And what do you do with the communications piece you mentioned?
Well, the communications piece is part of the workshop, and so they look at emerging issues, part of that, and so it's looking at things like the seismicity questions around fracking. You know, what are the facts about earthquakes and saltwater disposal, those sorts of things. So, as an example, the last workshop we had people come in from Oklahoma and from the Bureau of Economic Geology and actually communicate to them what's the latest in the studies that are still ongoing. Some of it's new material that hasn't been completed, but here's what we're learning as we go. And again, this is not it's not being at all filtered by the industry. It is funded, but the work is actually being done by different groups. But then their communication piece, it was interesting. So we had a professor from the University of Texas who was not an oil and gas expert, was a communications expert, and came in and talked to the regulators about how's the best way to have a working relationship with people that maybe you're having to deliver news that they might not want to hear, and vice versa. How do you work through those issues? How do you document your points so that you can not only just say, here's my opinion, but here's my facts? And so it was kind of little communications 101 to say, okay, this is a good way to breach what could be difficult conversations, when you have to have them. It's pretty educational.
And what's next?
Well, next is moving on into 2018 and preparing for our workshops next year. We hope to be doing our next workshop at Colorado School of Mines, probably in the late fall or late spring or early summer. The next one will then probably be at Penn State at the end of the summer or early fall, and then probably at the University of Texas, probably during just before during the winter break. And so we're looking to get our funding for that. So as we look forward, we think, well, how much more work is to be done? And our polling of looking to different people, we think there's probably another 1,000 regulators out there that need to be trained. We've also gotten feedback from industry that this could be something that the federal agencies would want to see. The BLM, the EPA, Department of Energy, or could we put together a component that would focus on offshore? The offshore regulatory community, which could be state and federal waters. So we think there's kind of an opportunity to do a broader reach to different regulators. And we've even had kind of looking down the road. We're going to walk before we run, but oil and gas is spreading throughout the world to areas where it had not taken place, and some of these countries are actually putting together regulatory regimes and training people to do these same jobs that we've established in the U.S. for a long time. We think there's an opportunity to actually then go and talk to some of these other foreign governments and their regulatory communities and do some training as well. So we think we're going to be around for a while.
Well, good luck. Thanks for talking with me.
Sure, happy to do it.
Just a few of the voices from this year's annual conference, the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, held Sunday through Tuesday in Pittsburgh. And that's Pennsylvania Legacies for another week. We'll have a fresh episode next Friday, so join us then. In the meantime, check out the PEC website at pecpa.org, pecpa.org. We tweet at PECPA, and we're on Facebook too. Check us out there. Send us an email to legacies@pecpa.org. Until next week, for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, I'm Josh Balderson. Thanks for listening. It's Friday, October 13th, and from the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, this is Pennsylvania Legacies. I'm Josh Balderson. The great Alec delegation that passed through last month was able to get a taste of what will soon be coming to other parts of the state in need of an economic boost. I hooked up with the tour at Ohio Tunnel, part of the Laurel Highlands, in order to get their impressions of the ride thus far, and that's going to be the focus of this week's show. First up, let's hear from Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, who's on this put the trip together. How's the ride going so far?
It's been great. Left Pittsburgh yesterday morning, and now just did the 18-mile trek from Connellsville to Ohio Powell. And what's amazing is to see so many people along the trail who've come here. We met a couple from Kansas, we've met two couples from Texas, and a young woman from Scotland who came just to ride this trail because they read about it online or wherever. So it really does attract folks to Western Pennsylvania.
What are you noticing about the towns that you passed through along the way?
There's an awful lot of economic new things every year. We did it last year. See, every once in a while you see a new coffee shop or a new bakery or a new restaurant, hotels. There's an infrastructure, an economic infrastructure that's part of it. But it also attracts people who may not even work on the trail or make money from the trail, but they actually just want to live in a great place that has a good quality of life, and the trail adds to that. So when you think of companies like Amazon that we're trying to attract, and some of the Googles of the world, and it really attracts an economic growth for Western Pennsylvania, or maybe turn around some of the things that have happened in past years.
You talk about the relationship between local governments and communities that are benefiting from this transformation and the state, support from the state. How important is it?
Well, it's critical. And you know, today we're on the trip with Secretary Cindy Dunn from DCNR and Secretary Leslie Richards from PennDOT. They see the value, obviously, parks and transportation and how that all comes together. I know Governor Wolf has been a huge supporter.
A rise of nearly a third. The government is facing pressure over its handling of the outbreak amid criticism over shortages of protective equipment for frontline health workers and delays in increasing testing. It's been confirmed 2,000 NHS England staff are being tested out of a workforce of 1.3 million. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said testing is the solution to unlock the puzzle of coronavirus. Our political correspondent is Nick Hadley.
The big question we've all been asking
100,000 was last Friday, 5 days ago.
What is the exit strategy for the lockdown that the country is in? I think we've got a firm indication from the Prime Minister that the government thinks it is getting testing massively
extended the stay-at-home order
the World
for the
Health
whole state. Previously it was only for
says he's
certain
deeply
counties.
concerned about the rapid rise in the number of cases of coronavirus around the world. He said confirmed cases worldwide would reach 1 million in the coming days. The head of the WHO's Health Emergencies Program, Mike Ryan, says governments need to focus on implementing longer-term strategies.
We need to be very careful not to be changing policies every single day, because people on the front line need certainty in their days. Communities need some certainty, and then if we have to change, we change, and we communicate that clearly. And then we do it again for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then we see how that works. This is about adapt, adjust, implement, measure, do it again, and you just have to keep doing that over and over and over again until you control the disease.
Israel is introducing tighter restrictions to limit the spread of the coronavirus. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the Jewish, Christian and Muslim observations of Passover, Easter and Ramadan should take place with immediate family members only. World news from the BBC. The United States Defense Secretary
Easter on Sunday Mass will not be celebrated publicly this year.
As part of a major new operation to counter drug trafficking from Venezuela. At the White House briefing, President Trump added that the U.S. military South Command was doubling its resources in the region. The United Nations Climate Summit due to take place in the Scottish city of Glasgow in November has been postponed, the latest major international event to be affected by the coronavirus outbreak. The British Business Secretary Alok Sharma said the world was facing an unprecedented global challenge and countries
I actually knew a person who was named Alok Sharma.
The U.S. Navy has begun evacuating the crew of an aircraft carrier docked in Guam in the Western Pacific after its captain warned the coronavirus outbreak on board was threatening their lives. The acting Navy Secretary, Thomas Modly, said about 1,000 personnel had been taken off the USS Theodore Roosevelt and quarantined.
Our highest obligation as leaders is to ensure the safety and readiness of every sailor and Marine on the line. taken every precaution to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the fleet. I know you've all been following the situation on the USS Teddy Roosevelt very closely, as have we.
Others will be evacuated in the coming days. 4,000 crew on board. The bar owner, the Spanish Canary Island of Tenerife, has been fined for breaching the country's lockdown after using a secret door leading from an adjacent supermarket. Spaniards are only allowed to go out to buy food or essential items since the emergency rule was introduced to fight the pandemic. Though the bar was apparently shut, police found the bar owner, the supermarket owner, and another man enjoying their drinks. The barman was fined for flouting rules there and at 2 other bars in the town. BBC News.
Prohibition at the bar.
Support for the world comes from Babbel, a language app that teaches real-life conversations in a new language, like Spanish, French, or German. Babbel's 10 to 15-minute lessons are available in the App Store or online at Babbel, BABBEL.com. And by Progressive Insurance, offering Snapshot driving habits. Now that's Progressive. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Hi, Marco Werman. This is The World. Glad you could make it today. A memo from the captain of the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt to his superiors took the form of a plea. Navy Captain Brett Crozier said more than 100 sailors on a ship are infected with the coronavirus, and the spread is accelerating. Sailors do not need to die, Crozier wrote yesterday. We are failing to properly take care of our most trusted asset, our sailors. Navy brass agreed. Most of the nearly 5,000 crew members aboard the carrier will be allowed to disembark onto the U.S. island territory of Guam. Acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly told CNN that the situation has been challenging.
We're doing it in a very methodical way because it's not the same as a cruise ship. I mean, that ship has armaments on it, it has aircraft on it. We have to be able to fight fires if there are fires on board the ship. We have to run a nuclear power plant. So there are a lot of things that we have to do on that ship that make it a little bit different and unique. But we're managing it and we're working through it and we're taking all the input, and we appreciate all the input.
49 degrees.
The CEO of the ship and the medical command on that ship.
On this first day of April in the year 2020.
For residents of the island of Guam, population about 170,000, allowing sailors to disembark is a big concern.
Confident Guam in the headlines from the Pacific News Center, a major developing situation this morning after the captain of the USS Theodore Roosevelt fled with Navy leaders.
That's radio station KGUM in Guam's capital, Hagatna. Guam's governor, Lou Leon Guerrero, announced today that she is working on a plan to quarantine sailors in local hotels. Victoria Leon Guerrero is on Guam. She's an activist with the group Independent Guaman, which is concerned about the governor's decision.
Guam is already trying to contain the rapid spread of COVID that's happening on a very tiny island with just a little over 160,000 people. We already have 77 cases on Guam. And so bringing in a carrier with 5,000 people who have been in such close quarters with each other and COVID rapidly spreading there, that the island needs to be able to focus on the community here.
Did the governor of Guam promise an aid?
Well, the governor of Guam, after the captain of the carrier wrote a letter about how serious the issue was, the governor and the admiral started making decisions to house those who are testing negative in local hotels, and they have said that they're going to ensure that local hotel workers don't interact with the people coming off the carrier, that they're working on what that's going to look like.
Do you know if any sailors have disembarked yet?
No, so the details of what this is going to look like haven't really been made available to the community. A lot of the numbers have not been officially made available to the community in terms of how many people have already tested positive on the carrier. This information is vital, I believe, to our community, and it's a big difference from they will stay on the carrier or on base to now we will be housing them in the hotels.
How big a dilemma is this for the residents of Guam? Because Captain Brett Crozier, the commander of the Roosevelt, is pleading for help. I mean, he's saying the U.S. troops. How are people talking about that?
You know, what the groups have been saying is that if we know for a fact that it's spreading rapidly on the ship, and then you remove them from the ship and you bring them into the local community, even one one new case in the local community, because of how small and interconnected this community is, could lead to many, many more cases, and that is problematic. Nobody said that we want to turn away these sailors from healthcare that they need. You know, there are people from Guam who serve in the Navy and are on this carrier, and we by no means want them to be mistreated or put their lives at risk. No. What we're saying is the Navy has the resources to handle this within their base.
We should also point out that many residents of Guam are veterans or active duty Navy. Some are actually aboard the Roosevelt right now. So how do those ties between Guam and the U.S. military complicate the situation for people on the island?
We constantly, because of, you know, our relationship with the United States and with the military, particularly the people of Guam, truly not being able to say, you know what, we need to focus on how we're going to handle the increasing number of cases that we have, and there isn't enough information for us to really know what we're expecting here. There hasn't been transparency on behalf of the military.
Victoria Lola Villon Guerrero is an activist with the group Independent Guahan. She's been speaking with us from Guam. Victoria, thank you very much for your time and good health to you and your family.
Thank you, you too.
Remember, the novel coronavirus is just that, novel, new. Epidemiologists are learning about it in real time as it continues its global path of destruction. One question they're trying to answer is whether there is a seasonal aspect to it. Does it behave like the flu and lose steam as the weather warms? Bill Hanage is an epidemiologist at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Professor Hanage, there was a study that came out of MIT last weekend that found that 90% of COVID-19 transmissions as of March 22nd occurred in areas with a temperature between 37 and 63 degrees Fahrenheit. What is the significance of that?
Oh, it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit right now. We're screwed.
It suggests, I should say, that perhaps there is some element of seasonal forcing. Seasonal forcing is what epidemiologists like me, it's a term we use to describe things which spread more in the winter than in the summer. So, for instance, flu has very strong seasonal forcing. You're much more likely to get flu transmission occurring in the winter than you are in the summer months. So this study has been interpreted as suggesting that there could be seasonal forcing for COVID. However, I think that we still need to get more data to be sure about that.
Today, hot and humid countries seem to have, and I should say seem to have, had fewer cases of COVID-19. Would you agree with that? And if you do, why is that the situation?
I think that we have to consider a number of other factors.
The northern states in the United States are the ones that are worse.
Singapore is not only a hot and humid country, it's also a place which has excellent public health, excellent contact tracing, and some very world-class epidemiologists.
Washington, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
If you look to other places around that region, like Indonesia, Indonesia was famously bad in terms of starting testing. And so there may have been a lot of community spread there that we just haven't detected. What we are seeing with COVID is that when it enters a community, in some places it kicks off large outbreaks quite quickly, like in Iran. In others, it does